Good morning here from sunny Copenhagen and welcome back to the Copenhagen Fintech Week. We are live once again from the Fintech and Dreams studio. This time today in a clean t-shirt. Simon has decided to go for the same Fintech and Dreams t-shirt he was wearing yesterday, so there's a bit of space between us, not just because of the corona. We have an excellent program lined up for you today. Simon will tell you a bit about the first session coming up in just a few minutes.
Yeah, we have a tight schedule today. We have been looking very much forward to the first session here, because we at Copenhagen Fintech like to salute the great Fintech Partnerships, and our good friends from EY has just made a fresh report on case studies in partnerships, Nordic Fintech Partnerships, and in this session they will talk about the report, and they will interview some of the excellent case stories we have on partnerships related to the Nordic Fintech scene. So this will be a pre-recorded session, so there'll be no Q&A in the end, but you can ask questions in the chat, and they will try to answer them live during the session. But Anders Eskelsen from EY will present the session in a second.
Thank you all for joining. It has been a privilege to have interviewed you all previously, and it's quite an interesting journey to have had this conversation with you and the remaining participants in our partnership report. So as you know, EY has been on a journey where we during the last 4 months interviewed a number of companies in order to find out what were the key drivers in order to get to a successful stage of partnerships within this meeting between fintechs and financial institutions. And I think the commonality amongst all of the participants is that there's a high dependency on the ability to communicate and meet and connect with people. So it would be really interesting just to get your views on that during the session today, and also have a conversation on some of the key things that have enabled you to really reach the level where you are today, and what you see as the future state of these partnerships. So the work, of course, that we're now recording is going to be part of the Copenhagen Fintech Week session next week, where we will share these thoughts, and also as the release of the partnership report. So looking very much forward to it. But it would be great with a round of introductions, and if we go with Jess first.
Yes, my name is Jess. I'm the CEO and founder of Synergy. Synergy is a payroll and HR software, and we are currently in the Danish market, but moving to other markets as well. We have a collaboration with Tryg, where we exchange data in order to minimize administration for small companies and medium companies. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm looking very much forward to this session.
Thank you. And Michaela and Tryg, Line as well.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Line Dalsford. I'm a senior innovation lead in Tryg. Tryg is one of the largest non-life insurance company in the Nordic region, with activities in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Each day we work hard to make insurance simple and safe for our customers. In Tryg's headquarters we have the camp, which is Tryg's own co-working space with 34 startups.
And my name is Michaela, working in Tryg's innovations unit, new business and customer innovation, where we are looking into how to distribute our insurances in new ways and find new models around it. We have this awesome collaboration with Synergy, as he just introduced. So we are also looking very much forward to this.
Then going to Joachim.
Thank you very much, Anders. So my name is Joachim. I am one of the 3 co-founders and the CEO of Minna Technologies. We are building digital products for incumbent banks, currently working with banks across 7 European markets, focusing on building products related to subscription management.
And that's you, David.
Hi, I'm David, heading the innovation teams of ING in Belgium and the Netherlands. ING being a pan-European top tier 1 bank, active in 13 countries in retail and 40 in wholesale. and very active in the domain of fintechs. We build our own fintechs, we invest in fintechs, and we also collaborate with fintechs. And one of partnerships we are working on today is indeed with Minna Technologies from Joachim, and we do that from Labs Brussels, which is our accelerator program we are very proud of.
Thank you very much. So if we then take it from that into a segue into what you're doing, Joachim, could you just give us a short insight into how you got started with working with David and the progression that you've been through?
Sure. So starting Minna Technologies 6 years ago, we actually started as a B2C proposition because we saw the need coming from an end user perspective, and we wanted to help people manage their finances when you increase the number of subscriptions that you actually buy and consume. Then in 2016, we also realized that PSD2 was happening, and there became a window of opportunity where banks kind of changed their mindset from competition to collaboration. So I remember the early days of open banking and PSD2, where banks and fintechs had more of a boxing game, but this rapidly translated into a collaborative mindset. So we started our B2B journey in 2017, and already in 2018, I met David. It was actually on Copenhagen Fintech, where David met my dear colleagues. So we are celebrating 2 years together now, and we participated in the ING Fintech Village, which now has a new name. But we were in the batch of 2019, and today I'm proud to say that we have a commercial relations, and we're helping the ING customers to have a more convenient life.
Very good. And then you, yes, as well. Could you just introduce what the differences you make for Tryg?
Yes. So our collaboration with Tryg is started actually pretty simple. We know that companies at least in Denmark, they has to have a mandatory insurance for their employees. And in order to keep track on that, every year you need to do a lot of administration. You need to calculate how many employees did you have, how many hours did they work, in which categories do they work in, and so on. And since we have a payroll system, we have all the data that was needed to be available for actually exchanging that automatically. So that was actually the starting point. So the starting point was to, make sure that our customers are correct insured. They don't pay too much, they don't pay too little, and then also minimize the administration in the companies. Then we have involved the collaboration with also introducing travel insurances. So we have an employee app where employees, they can register their travel days and so on, and these data is also available for Tryg. So the whole idea is actually to give Tryg the possibility to give smaller companies, and now when I say smaller, I mean up to 500 employees, an enterprise service.
That's very interesting, and it's interesting that you have the perspective. It's very much starting from the perspective where you're trying to make things different or more easily available to both consumers as well as companies, and minimize friction really. So as a reflection on that, then jumping back to David as well, how do you see that Minna then captures the ability to challenge you as a bank in regards to this friction perspective?
I think for me, key for partnerships with fintechs is, and it's already one of the pitfalls I see too often happen in the market, that as Joachim rightly mentioned, it was a bit of an atypical start of the journey, because it started indeed when I jumped off stage in Copenhagen Fintech in June 2018, and shortly before me, I had the honor to see one of his fellow founders pitching, so that triggered my interest. But I think the ideal way of looking at it is that it starts with a real problem or an opportunity inside the bank, because one of the things that too often happen is that people fall in love with a fintech, a solution, they start a POC, and then afterwards they start looking for a problem owner in the bank, trying to set up a partnership. And obviously, we all learned the hard way, I'm afraid, ING included, that this is very difficult to fly. Not to deliver a POC, but at the end of the day, the startups are not in this game for a POC, they want to do business. And that starts typically after the POC. And friction is typically, we always are looking to make the life of our customers easier. So anything you can do to carve out friction from a customer point of view is key. And clearly for us, Minna is doing that because they not just give you the overview of all your subscriptions, but they also allow you to stop subscriptions and to switch. And I think talking about a customer pain, buying a subscription is very easy because that's typically a click on a button, but getting rid of something, that's typically very hard. And that's where for us, we do believe that this is going to be an exciting journey for our customers.
Yes. Thank you, David. And I think that perspective is very interesting in regards to this ownership perspective. And it's great that you guys, now we have to get you moving in Tryg because the light ended up turning off. So bringing that perspective to you as well, how do you see that journey on this capturing the essence of what the fintech brings in, but also then bringing that into your organization and anchoring it in a way where you get the full benefit from it, so you don't lose ownership really?
I think that one learning that we have is that we rather be a co-creation with the startup than have a supplier angle for it, because then we can be more transparent and aligned and have the testing in focus. So actually the real test is if the customer is buying in on the product or the service. So our angle for that is go in the market, test it, co-creation rather than a long-term partnership in the first heat.
Yes. And so what is your reflection then on being, you can say, on the receiving side of that? Yes, does it work?
Yeah, actually for us, I would say that I think we had the right approach by entering this partnership because we wanted to create something, and we were not looking into a big partnership agreement, or we didn't look into money to earn money on this. We wanted to build something cool and to show our customers that this is what you can do with new software. I'm dealing with payroll software, probably some of the most boring software or financial software out there. So every time we can do stuff like this, we also show what the difference is between a startup and the old companies in the market. So we have these kind of possibilities to help companies being smarter and work in a smarter way. So for us, that was that was the main approach. So we didn't enter the partnership to earn a lot of money to begin with. Hopefully, we will do that at the end of the day. But to begin with, we just wanted to show Tryg that we can do something cool with the customers we are onboarding and with the customers' data.
I think also that you take off some of the friction by co-creation, because then you can show the business units that you can work with the customers in a whole other way, and maybe there are some agendas that's not that obviously for the startups that you can work along the way as you improve the testing and
So maybe I can chip in here with a bit of a different perspective here. So the word co-creation raises a yellow flag for me, because I think that when you are a very early startup and you need to find your product market fit, co-creation is perfect because you will validate the need of your customer, being the bank. But when reaching into a scale-up phase, co-creation in many cases equals customization. So if you invest too much in co-creation, you will not be able to scale your product. And I know this is one of the strong suits and why I like ING, because they are focusing on collaborating with scale-ups and not startups. And I would encourage a scale-up to not work with co-creation. You should be comfortable enough with your product and the value that you're creating, so you should be able to sell it without too much customization. So I'm actually against co-creation if it's too big of a scope.
Yeah, but the difference between a startup and a scale-up is that if you are a startup, you have not had this showcase or tested your product in different markets. As in a scale-up, you have your proof of concept and some customer base. You can show the corporate that this is working, and it's much easier to build from there. So I think it's a nice perspective to differentiate between those two.
Maybe to add on something, and I think indeed it depends a bit if you're a startup or a scale-up. I think if you're a startup looking for your first customer, you're doing a real POC, and then working for free can be an option for the reasons Joachim just shared. On the other hand, I do agree with Joachim as well. If you're a scale-up, you're not doing POCs anymore because you already have proven that your concept is working, and you're doing POVs, proof of values. And value comes with a price. And so for me, I might be talking against my own interest, but that's the reason why I prefer to pay for POCs, because it's also showing to the startup that we are serious about it and that there's some currency on the table. Because the danger is if you start with a free POC, that you will have a very tough journey to turn that into a paying contract afterwards. But it depends a bit. Again, I think there's no black or white answer. I think it depends very much on the stage you're in and the context of the contract. But
Very good. Yes, that's the final comment. Then I have sort of a segue into something else.
Exactly, but just on the other hand, David, with all respect, we started up the collaboration with Tryg, let's say in November, and already in January we actually could launch this to our customers. And I would consider Synergy as a scale-up. We have more than 5,000 Danish companies on our product. And so we used it actually to show the difference between old and new technologies. And also, when you are a startup / scale-up, for us it's also a branding value to being put together with these kind of companies. So I'm very happy about our investment. But I agree. Now we are going to talk money with Tryg at some point, and then let's see how difficult it will be.
Exactly, and I think what came to mind was in what actually quite a few of the large financial institutions said during these interviews, and what was the sentiment was sometimes the startups or the fintechs, the scale-ups, and I would say the scale-ups probably figured that one out, but I think some of the startups really come lacking the what's in it for the large financial institution, making it really hard to make that decision to actually go forward, because the idea, the concept might look nice, cool. It could be pretty good fit, but sort of having that lack of maturity makes it difficult for the large financial institution to make the decision. Could you reflect on that journey for you, Joachim? Because I think it sounds like you have a quite sort of elaborated road to where you are now in that regard as well.
Yes, I'm happy to. So I've been taking a lot of learnings and beatings over the past 6 years trying to do this. And I think that understanding of your customer is crucial. So you are doing enterprise software selling. And if you can't align your product value with the key initiative and the budgets that exist on behalf of the incumbent, you will not get inside the door. So if you go as a startup or a scale-up and try to present your product, they will not even listen to you. You need to explain that you have understood what is the problem that the bank is addressing. So starting in the pain point for the bank rather in your solution, it's obvious when you say it, but I see so many companies doing it in the wrong order. And the second aspect of this would be that the importance of understanding the universe. So the investment that we have taken in PCI DSS compliance, ISO 27000 standards, we are forced to take this 1 to 2 years before I would love to take them, because these are requirements on behalf of the incumbents. So understanding the criteria and how you mitigate risk and what value you are bringing is actually more important than pitching your own solution.
And from Tryg's side, have you seen that same reflection? Because I would guess that you have a lot of conversations with both startups and scale-ups, and Yes is delivering a good solution to you, but which adds the value. So where do you see this? How are you exposed to this kind of sentiment?
I think in general it's quite important to focus on who you're pitching for and how to communicate with each other. If you need to pitch your tech idea to someone who doesn't work with tech on a daily basis, it's important that you can focus on the business model, what the problem is solving for the customer, or what it looks and feels like, and how it supports the tech. It can be difficult for a business developer to figure that out by him or herself. And Also, I think it's crucial to understand that IT integration requires long-term planning and prioritizing of resources in order to make it easy as possible in the organization. So yeah, I think that the business model and how it will gain your target is very important in the first communication.
I think this is a great segue into you, David. So this turns into stakeholder management and how many different perspectives there will be in the process. And I think that is the biggest contribution that you had in our relation. So navigating these organizations with all of their different priorities, it's impossible as an outsider.
Yeah, and I think I will come back on that one, Joachim, indeed. But I think it starts even a bit sooner in the process. Obviously, I'm not aware of any bank not pretending that innovation is not a top priority, but I think it's a challenge for all startups to go a little bit deeper and truly understand whether this is just a fancy buzzword on their wallboard when you enter their headquarters, or they are really serious about it. And I think you can figure that out by asking a few questions like, what is your strategy in innovation? Do you have prioritized value spaces? Because if you can hook on to those, you have a better chance, because at the end of the day, we can only do a limited number of projects. We cannot serve all candidate partnerships. Do you have processes in place? Do you have a governance framework, etc.? And then again, I think finding the right balance between having a conversation with the business, who should really drive this and own this from the start, which is key to our success, but also balancing with a central innovation team. I think helping you to navigate through the complicated landscape, I think that's the recipe for success. And I do think, I always make the joke, have a conversation with the head of innovation, myself, but as of the second conversation, somebody from the business should be around the table, because some people keep discussing with the head of innovation, and that should be a red flag. And the other thing, if you start with the business, you better check twice whether you're talking to the right partner, because it wouldn't be the first person that said, hey, I thought I was talking to, let's say, the head of compliance and trying to sell a RegTech solution. And before then, he figured out that there were many heads of compliance in a complicated group, because I'm making a bad joke about it, but that's reality. I have a head of compliance in ING Belgium, but there's a head of compliance in the Netherlands. There's one on group level. Who are you really talking to? And don't fall too fast in love being a startup with your incumbents either. And the opposite we discussed already, but I think it goes both ways. Yeah.
So I think, yes, did you fall in love too fast?
Definitely, because I fall in love with good solutions. And then I would also say that I think there is a difference. Our main product is not insurances and so on. It's a side product. So for us, we still have our motivation on having customers on and so on, but we also have a motivation of creating something innovative. So for us, it is a side project, but hopefully it can turn into big business at some point. And also, just so you know, I have also been through the other part, the compliance part, because last year I sold 10% of my company to Danske Bank, and that was a total other deal. We are a strategic partner with Danske Bank. So as you said, David, then it's just a lot of other things that is happening. So I totally recognize that. But for us with Tryg, I think we have had the right approach by not doing it too complex in the beginning, because then we would not sitting here and having a talk about we actually created a solution so fast, we added the customers, and now we are talking about what can we then do together. So I think there's a difference. So if you are a startup or scale up and your product rely too much on the corporate, then I totally agree. Then you should be very sure about the things you are mentioning. But for us, it has been it's a side project, and we of course see it as a big business opportunity in the future. But our core business is to create payroll and HR software.
Yes.
I think I'd like to add to that, because many startups should be prepared that the fact that many large companies already have an international tech supplier who are expert in adopting the latest new tech. And what I think that Jes really aced it at Tryg was that he could differentiate himself by those large competitors in that field. So I think that you should be aware, if you are a startup or a scale-up, that who your competitors are to get the attention from the large companies.
Exactly, and that attention perspective, because as you alluded to, David, if you keep meeting with the head of innovation, you never get to the business, and creating that governance where you ensure that involvement. I think that's one of the places that some companies, at least in the financial services industry, some seem to do it in the way that you described there, David, where you're meeting with the head of innovation, and it's a guy who's wearing sneaks and hoodie, and that only goes so far, right? So how do you then in a large organization that has priorities, it takes time to get an IT roadmap in place. How do you really work with that to then create an environment where there's space to do the grooming, you could say, and understand what the fintechs bring in?
I'm not sure whether there's a magical answer to that, because if there would be, it would probably already have been written by Ernst & Young potentially in a playbook. So I think every situation is different. What is helping me, I can say, there's little advantage of being at my age, but one of the advantages is that I do know the bank after 25 plus years in ING. And I think it is important because I have this recognition inside ING, credibility, which is sometimes lacking with more younger peers that are often perceived indeed as geeky persons, but that don't have a clue what banking is all about. And I do think by truly empathizing with the real pains and opportunities in the bank, I think that helps tremendously in setting up these conversations. And from the other hand, I think it also helps the startups, because even if I get in touch with the most crazy and fancy startup, I would always love to do business if ING would be my company. If I know there is no honest interest, I'm not afraid to tell them in the most transparent way, run away and go and find yourself another partner, because it's not going to fly. And it's finding that right balance, because the people inside ING also know that I'm not over spamming them every week with startups, which I could easily do it because I receive commercial offers every day. But I try to be very careful and selective, and the people inside ING know that when they receive a mail from me, that they better have a look at it, because I do think I know it should be important to them. But it's that's my answer to in this context. And but the key is, I think, making sure that you're very well connected with and you truly understand what are the biggest pain points in the business. And how do I do that? To share the story, and it's very basic. In fact, when I start a conversation with a business tribe lead, the typical first reaction is, David, we like you very much, but we don't have time for innovation. I say, yeah, I know that, but what's keeping you awake at night? And then they come with their top 3 pain points. Okay, and did you already have a solution for that? No. And then at the end of 15 minutes coffee chat, I still was able to sell the idea of working with a startup. But it's a bit selling without selling, sympathizing with all the other priorities they need to have, and I think truly understand the core of their business needs. I think that's what works in my particular case. Yeah.
Hmm. And then jumping to you, Joachim, because now you've experienced what David represents in an ING context. You must have some reference cases where you could sort of what would be sort of your key takeaways from those? What went wrong where it you wasted time, you could say, or at least spent time that could have been used better elsewhere?
So one is very much on the topic that David mentioned before. So if there's a lack of linkage between the innovation department and the business unit, you will waste your time. So we had a few of these examples, especially with incumbent banks that want to provide what I call innovation theater, that they run accelerator programs, but there is no sponsorship, there's no executive decision power. Even if you spend 12 weeks in such a program and you have great POC outcomes, you hit all of the success metrics, there is no decision power on the side of the bank. So just validate that there is experience, there are success cases, there are reference cases. So be very selective with what accounts you engage with. That's absolutely top one. And just for a fun anecdote with ING, I had met 72 people face to face when we signed the contract. It gives a flavor to the amount of people you need to meet, and having a champion inside to tell you who you need to meet, that is super important.
Definitely. That sounds like a very long list of stakeholders that you have to sell your idea to, and they all have their different opinions on that. I guess, yes, would you recognize the same picture, and how do you then, you can say, bring what the tech solution that you come with into a context where there's compliance, there's all sorts of different pressures from legal, etc.
Yeah, I would say that that we pretty early in our company we have been used to a lot of compliance. We're doing payroll, we are handling personal data and so on. So I would say that we were pretty used to that. So we're pretty much in control of all of that. So we were not that scared from Tryg when they said that, yeah, we have GDPR and we need to make sure of all this and this. I would actually say that the biggest interruption in the partnership was the design department. How did we place their logo on our website? Because the red color can't be together with a blue color, and so on. But of course, I think in our perspective, that we didn't enter, the partnership with that we need to have some kind of money revenue streams between us. I really think that helped us a lot to reach a point where we could show a product, and where we are now, where we actually can see that, all right, we can actually onboard customers to Tryg, and now what can we then do in step number 2? But I will also say that as a startup or scale up, you are also sometimes the big guy. Technology-wise, we are built on new technology. We can do a lot of cool stuff. And the big corporates are often set in a lot of legacy systems and so on. So I would say that it actually goes both ways. And then I would also say that because our project is a side project on ours, we can live with some manual stuff in this entire setup. So I think it's a little bit give and take from both parties. I could have said yeah, but we can only do this if you have an API. But I also know that big corporates, if they decide we will have an API, then I can call them 5 years later, and then there might be thinkings of getting an API. So I really think for me it was all about finding solutions in order to show what we could do together.
And just to pick up on that then, for you at Tryg, it sounded like the compliance and legal department was actually the easy part in what you got to.
Yeah, I totally agree with Yes. I think what was important for us was that he kind of already had the solution on a problem we have identified, and also just to refer back to the business innovation relation, I think that we have a clear mandate in our innovation department who gave us the mandate to just to do business with Yes in a test phase. Yeah, the legal department was actually whole carrot out of this for a start. Of course, we held an legal agreement, and I'm sure that Yes also will say that it's was a complex one for the collaboration we had for the start, but yeah, actually it was how does we place this solution and common insurance solution at Synergy's side with the right what can you say, permission from our customers to exchange these data that we were going to get from Yes. That was actually the main problem or challenge, if I could say that.
Yes. And I would then guess basically that this understanding of your individual areas, both you can say in a Synergy and Minna context, being quite aware, so both are handling to a large extent customer data. There's a relationship to some extent to the end customer, but then balancing that out in regards to then driving a different agenda perhaps than the classical compliance angles that would have a very set standard. Again, you talked about PCI DSS and ISO 27000, Joachim. So sometimes it's easier to front load it because then you've done the investment and you understand where they're coming from. But is it an impediment to innovation to get to that point sooner rather than later, or how do you see that balancing act?
Was it me or Joachim?
Joachim, sorry.
It's a good question. And one perspective of this is the value of reference clients. So banks are risk averse by their DNA. It's kind of in the business model. So what kind of investments do you need to do in order to get your first reference case? So when you have a partner, the second partner is much more likely to follow since the first one approved you. And we also have Visa as one of our big investors, which is also a very good contributor since they have made their tech audits and data security diligence on us. So having a third party can also be EY that is putting a stamp that you are a good player to work with from a risk perspective, including all of the compliance aspects. It's valuable to take that investment up front. And I know this is also one of the reasons that David would say, why the focus on scale-ups instead of startups. So you will get this pile of paper when you start working with the bank. That is just reality. Can you treat that if you are 7 people in the basement? Most likely not.
No.
I can totally feel that, Joachim. When we got the first customers that was a little bit bigger, they also wanted to have different certification and licenses and so on. And we thought, oh shit, now we have to deal with all of this. But we did, and it has really helped us. But it's a big investment for a startup to throw hundreds of thousands of Danish kroner into something like that, when you can see, all right, what do I get out of it besides satisfying these customers with big needs? I will also say that we have been probably through the same as you have, but that's together with Danske Bank, where we have had this product approval where, tons of lawyers have gone through everything in the company. But I think that there the time has actually helped us, because now when we are going into the next phase of Tryg, we are a completely different company from that we was 1 year ago in regards to all of that. So I think it will be easier, the more mature the company becomes and so on. But it is a very big thing for a small company to have these things.
Yes, I just want to give some credits to your mentality, because what you just said, that is such a big success criteria, that if you can see the compliance work as a benefit, something that you will grow and learn from, well, I know that the party on the other side of the table will appreciate that mindset.
Yeah, and I think to add a few cents from my side, I think first of all, a bad joke. It's good to hear that Joachim knows more people at ING than at Minna, because you mentioned 72 and you're a 70-person company. But the bad joke being put aside, I think this is a learning journey. Also on my side, I can be honest about it. I discover policies in the bank every day on the fly that I was not aware of, even after 25 years. And we seem to be very good at inventing policies on the fly. And let's be honest as well, regulators are spamming us every day with new regulation as well. This being said, working with more scale-ups has a clear upside, but also comes with a challenge, because it means that also the company, Joachim, didn't start this journey with ING Belgium just to be happy with ING Belgium. He was very clear from the beginning that he was doing this to acquire the whole of ING. And I think it's important to be mutually clear on what is finally the goal of the partnership, because too often people start with a small POC and then all of a sudden raise their ambitions, and then you're no longer at par from both sides. But then again, you need to choose. Are you going to fight headquarters from day one, or are you starting to fight the Belgium team and then take it further from there after you have proven value for the customers and do it step by step? And this is the road we took together. And I trust that it's the right decision. The future will tell. But I think it's a learning journey also on our side on how to build something local with impact, but with a mindset to take it global afterwards. Because that's why people choose a global bank, not because it's more easy to become a customer. I guess. Yeah.
And in that regard, then, so given the fact that it's about choosing your battles in a good way, and also staying positive, I guess is sort of a key message. Relating to the requirements on the other side, this mutual buy-in. How do you ensure that in Tryg, for example? How do you ensure that when you enter into a conversation, that clarity that both David and Joachim are describing comes in clearly as a basis or foundation of the upcoming partnership? How do you do that?
I think that, as we mentioned earlier, our focus is on testing rather than long-term supplier agreements. In that context, we have changed our underlying processes around legal agreements and decision-making processes and so on. And we could be more transparent with the co-creation process of what is our gains and what is our KPIs, and have a more honest discussion. Sometimes think that it might take another direction, or we can maneuver it around as it gets more mature in the organization.
Yes, and that perspective really brings across as well the perhaps challenge, because then if it is a large organization, there's also going to be a lot of different stakeholders, as you've alluded to, Joachim. In terms of then, how do you translate your idea, which might be simple from a, you could say, end user perspective? How do you translate that to a compliance person versus a legal person versus a someone sitting in IT? Yes, do you see that that's something that can be a challenge, or do you really sort of roll with the punches in that regard, finding a common language, you could say?
You're absolutely right. And there is not a common language. So you need to understand the language of the person that you're meeting. So we have invested a lot in adapting the message so we can have the same purpose, but the way we put it on the table is very different depending on who is the recipient. So yeah, that's the short answer. There is no common language. And it's also understanding what are the buying criteria of the buying unit, so to speak. So we also derived our platform into 4 separate products because we realized that the banks have different buying criteria. So what is the outcome that you want to serve? It can be that you want to reduce cost of operations, you want to enhance the digital user experience, you want to generate new revenues. To understand who you're selling to and adapting the language there accordingly, it's crucial, and that's the craftsmanship of enterprise sales.
Yes. And yes, as well, how do you see that? Is it the same sort of pitch that goes for everyone, or how do you tweak it?
So it varies. I would say it varies a lot, very much due to what partners you're working with. I honestly feel that Tryg had another angle than a lot of other corporates. You know, they also really wanted to make this happen, and you can see it's young people, it's people who have a drive and so on, and I think that we got actually the space and the playground to try something out, and I think that really helped a lot. So I don't see us at 2 different languages or something, at least not in our in our collaboration. I honestly think it has been it has been pretty easy to enter the partnership. It has been pretty easy to do a lot of stuff, but of course now we also moving into the next phase of this collaboration, and then it will probably get way more complex and so on. But at least now we have a good starting point for the discussions. We can see we created something that made sense. We created something where people actually wanted to use the solution, and now then we are moving into to the next phase.
And
I very
I
much
think
agree with that.
yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I think it was very important that the way that you approaches us and actually was excellent timing in our unit, and the focus where we were strategically, it was it did that we both came into this partnership with a lot of buy-in, and it was really highly prioritized from our side at least.
Cool. And by the way, if we talked about money, how could I ever ask money from somebody who can't pay their power bills?
You know what? It's a health initiative from Tryg that we have to stand up.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very good. It's the right attitude to have, but of course you also need to be able to pay your electricity bill, which might be tricky without a commercial perspective there. But I think also one thing that I just sort of reflected on right now is it seems like luck is a dimension in this, or is it preparedness? So David and Joachim, you guys met at Copenhagen Fintech, and you just described from Tryg that you basically you were ready to hear what Yes was bringing to the table. Is it luck or is it preparation? What sort of
I can start with that. For me, totally honest, we heard some competitors were entering this market, and I totally panicked, like you do as a founder. You do that all the time when you hear all those rumors. And I heard that somebody were going to do something with insurance companies, and I was like, "Fuck, we need to do something with an insurance company." And I found, in my LinkedIn, who do I know from Tryg? And then I called that guy, and then we had a meeting 1 week later, and and the rumors were not true, but now we have a partnership with Tryg. So that's a little bit of luck, but of course, if I came 1 year earlier, we would have had 100 customers. We were gaining 50 companies a month. So it's also a little bit about timing and also the maturity of what kind of company you have yourself. So it's easier to come to Tryg that even though we only at that time, I think we had 2,500 or 3,000 companies on, then we at least have showed that we are growing and there could be a perspective in entering a partnership. So I think there's also a lot of things in that. And then I will also say, especially when we entered the partnership, there was also a lot of motivation in the team. Now we are working with such a big company and we are creating something cool. And I think that that as a corporate, you should not underestimate how much it means to a small company that you can enter partnerships with big companies and so on. It really gives a lot of team spirit and big hopes and dreams and so on. So I think it's super important to that corporates remember that. And as you said, David, also be honest so you don't waste too much time of startups, because every time I hear somebody will collaborate with us, I run home to the company and tell how big this can be and so on. So it's also bad to come back next week and then say, yeah, but it didn't turn out as expected. So I also think there is a big responsibility from the corporates actually to say, you're not there right now. Come back next year when you have 1,000 customers, 2,000 customers, or when you have another starting point, or just say it's never going to happen. Because, for a small company, you run after pretty much everything. At least I do.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's always an aspect of luck, for sure. This being said, I do think you need to organize your luck. So I think starting with, again, knowing what you want to innovate on, what are the value spaces, what are the problems, and then you actively pursue opportunities. You organize for that. Inside ING, we have a dedicated fintech scouting team that is looking into the different value spaces. And even if I was the lucky one that saw Minna pitching during Copenhagen Fintech, when I reached out to the fintech scouting team, I can tell you they already had them on the radar. They already knew them. So there's a bit of luck, but I think you need to organize yourself. And then when it comes to the start of a conversation, I think building on Joachim's remark as well, this whole thing, and I think I shared it when we did the interview for the report as well. I think stakeholder management is really a super complicated thing. It's helping also the startup to navigate where to spend energy on, because sometimes people are opposing against it and they might not be relevant, with all the respect for the colleagues. So don't waste time and cut through the noise. But then other people might be super important, say, hey, if this guy is asking questions, you better get your act together. And either you can have a direct conversation, or again, I can help in navigating, because I know if you want to convince that person, you better go through that person because he's a positive influencer. That's good old-fashioned stakeholder management, which they teach you in a basic project management course. No, but I think this is really vital to succeed and navigate it. But there's no magic. It's not a straight line, unfortunately. How we get to where we are today with Minna was not a straight line. It was a very bumpy road with lots of ups and downs. And then I think that's my last remark. When you're in a low, you need to know who to call. And that was Joachim and myself, to be fair. We didn't do the job. Well, at least I didn't do. I had somebody in my team, and I guess the same goes up for Joachim. But the few times we called, we knew there was something and we needed to unblock. And there you need to develop over time trust. And that's super important, because Joachim needs to know that if I call David and David says, I'm going to figure out what I can do for you, and I'll come back with an honest answer, he needs to trust me that he can take me on my word. And that's something you build over time. That takes time. But I think at the end of the day, people make the difference, and trust matters. And that's a bit my 2 cents on this.
Any reflections further on this, and I think also the sort of stakeholder perspective? We touched upon it a little bit earlier as well, but this looking into a large organization, there's a lot of different people, there's a lot of different agendas, and oftentimes it's not, sometimes it's not budget that follows ambition, but ambition can drive a lot of progress as well. So how does that then affect, you can say, the strategic direction that you can take in Tryg, for example? Do you try to sort of focus on a single one, or is there an ongoing dialogue with a number of fintechs that could be relevant? How do you try to sort of navigate that space and involve the business really?
Yeah. As I mentioned, Tryg got its own co-working space where we have 34 startups working, and we try to invite all our main stakeholders from the business areas down to have breakfast or tech talks or enlightenings, and mix the culture and the startups with all the stakeholders. So that is one angle that we work with startups and innovation in Tryg. And of course, we are a partner of Copenhagen Fintechs and Tech, and we attend to all the meetings. I think there's a quite maturity for large companies to work with startups in understanding pitches, etc. So I think that the culture class that also is mentioned in the report is not that huge as it was just 5 years ago. I think that people are much more open-minded, and yeah.
I think for me, what is key, and I know I'm partly repeating myself, it's the sponsor commitment. And for us, it's even going that far that when we select the companies, it's not just a startup pitching. We start with a sponsor pitch, and we want him or her to say, I want this. And even want it that much that he also commits, or she, to free up resources, spend time on this, deprioritize other things, because if he or she is not willing to sacrifice something, it means that it's not important enough. And we ask the sponsors to pitch in front of C-level guys. For us, that's also very key, and I think a key to our success. When the companies are selected, I think 2/3 of our executive committee is around the table. And after the POC, we formulate strategic recommendations. The sponsors say whether they want to go on or not, and they do that again in front of exactly the same people that selected the companies. And if then still there are issues, and there are always issues, we lack budget, there's tension between the demand and the supply side of the bank because somebody's feeling the pain, but it's somebody else that needs to deliver the solution. All these kind of things happen. I see Joachim nodding. They happen, but by securing from day one the right commitment on the right level, included the top of the bank, because at the end of the day, if you don't have C-level buy-in, and this sounds very Southern European authoritarian way of managing, but if you don't have C-level commitments, I can tell you, you will have a very tough job when the shit hits the fan. And the shit hits the fan one day during the journey.
I think that another takeaway from our side might be that if you have a strategic focus in the innovation department or in Tryg, that reach out to Copenhagen FinTech and make them do the scout or choose some startups for us with a specific purpose or a pain we want to solve. That is I think that we have good result with that, targeting startups from our strategic point of view, that you got buy-in from the organization. It makes it much more easier to collaborate later on and have this stakeholder management.
So I fully agree with the most of these statements, and I think one of the biggest challenges when running a scale-up is all about focus and priority, and this complexity also exists on the bank side or on the enterprise side. So I would say that it's a very good signal if there are few fintech engagements, because that means that they allocate more resources to a few significant problems. And this also goes for our sales efforts. So I agree with what Jess said, that as soon as you have an opportunity, you might go running back and, yes, I want to do this. And this is so dangerous. So how do you have that super granular qualification process to ensure that is this opportunity for real, or is it my feeling that is playing a game and this is just a widespread opportunity? So how do you as a startup focus on a few clients, invest a lot of resources, and the same for the enterprise? How do you focus a lot of resources to a few partnerships?
Exactly. And what's your reflection on that, Jess, as well? Do you see
it's, I think it's a little bit like a journey of a company. In the beginning, you're running to everything where there could be business and so on. But of course, you learn to focus a lot. Since we have entered, the partnership with Danske Bank, we are of course focusing a lot of that on that. But here is actually where the magic happens, because we are in that absolute situation that Danske Bank have also entered a strategic partnership with Tryg. So suddenly I actually can see that a small company as Synergy can actually be an enabler for two of the biggest companies in Denmark. So of course this have our focus, tremendously big focus to make this succeed. Because it will definitely put us into another situation. We have the partnership with Danske Bank, and we are going to do a lot of cool stuff with them. But just mixing it up with Tryg would make so much sense. So that's of course what we are focusing on. And then I will also say that we are scale up, we are startup. So we of course also looking to a lot of new opportunities with new products. When you do payroll software, at least we haven't invented anything new. Everybody gets payroll. All companies have a system. All payroll systems works. So I think that we are really a product-focused company. So we are developing a lot of new features and functions and so on, and also to go up in the market so we can have bigger and bigger customers. But then at the same time, we can see a big growth opportunity by entering this partnership with Tryg and Danske Bank. So we are very product-focused company, and then we are also focusing on big partnerships as well. And I will also say that when we decided to enter, Sweden, for an example, that was because we were going to do it with a big partner. Danske Bank is in Sweden, so they will distribute our software there. So we enter Sweden, and luckily, Tryg is also in Sweden. So that we can see that there are really a lot of opportunities here. But I totally agree, Joachim. It's about focusing, but I also think it's also important not to be too boring and just be too tunnel. We are going that direction. If an opportunity happens over here, then at least I will go that way as well.
I think maybe an easy way to figure out if you found the right incumbent, and I should sell this and put this story more on stage in fintech conferences. It's what I call the concept of the reversed accelerator. So when startups are applying for a accelerator program, typically they are spammed with 37 questions, like how well are you funded, what's the composition of your team, etc. And really, if you as a startup would simply mirror those questions and give them back to the incumbent, like if the question on funding is then, for example, is there money left at ING after the POC? Or is it just innovation theater? And if you really mirror the questions that you receive as a startup to be eligible for the program, I think you will come a long way in detecting whether this is the right company, because we ask, what are the data you need? Well, are you willing to share data, ING? Which infrastructure are you running on in the cloud? Well, can you host that solution in the cloud, or is it still messy out there? I think if you do that, the quality of the answers will already tell you a lot. And I use this concept to challenge my colleagues inside ING, because obviously, even if we try to do our best, we need to remain humble and we are far from perfect. I try to ask them the question and look in the mirror. If we would be the startups pitching in front of a jury of startups, do you think they would choose us? Or would they choose another incumbent bank? And if you think that you have doubts, what are your doubts based upon? And what does it take? Where do we need to improve upon in our internal processes in order to be the winner of the pitch contest as an incumbent bank pitching in front of a jury of startups? We should do this, Joachim. We already talked about it. We will do a pitch contest with the jury being in the startup, the jury being the startups, and the banks being pitching.
We would love to participate in that. It sounds a very interesting concept to have it switched up a little bit in that regard. So very shortly, with 2 minutes left on the clock, what is the future bringing to your partnerships? Just 30 seconds each. You're starting with yes.
Yes, now hopefully we move into a gathered or united partnership with Danske Bank and Tryg, going into new markets, and finally start to formalize some of our visions together, and just creating something extremely cool and hopefully earn a lot of money.
Very good. Tryg?
Yeah, specifically what Jes just said with Danske Bank, and also try to, I think, to look at the solution we already made and how we can expand that with products and new things and more. Yeah.
Yes. Joachim?
So in the journey with ING, I really think it's about validating the user value and now going to market in Belgium, proving that the business case are living up to expectations, and from there on, tackling the challenge of scaling with a group.
David, rounding off?
Building on that, less is more. We have too many partnerships. We're going to stop what's not working, and we want to scale what is successful. Because it's not about the number of partnerships, it's about the impact they are generating. And I think that's the focus going forward.
Thank you so much. And it's been very informing to hear your views on a lot of these topics. And we really look forward to also seeing what the future brings for your partnerships, because it sounds like there's a promising road ahead. And that is, I think, beneficial for the ecosystem as a whole, that everyone learns more and more from the success stories that there are, but in particular also what the shortcomings have been on the road in order to really capture the most value out of it. So thank you so much for your collaboration. It's very appreciated, and we look very much forward to hearing more and hopefully meeting up very soon when this situation around health changes, hopefully in the near future. So thank you so much, and see you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you all, and thank you for hosting, Anders.
Thank you.